Hello and welcome to Freedom Watch, your daily dose of raw liberty, streaming online at foxnews.com/freedomwatch. I'm Judge Andrew Napolitano here, defending freedom, defending your natural rights, and defending your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. It's very rare these days to find a lawmaker that is actually successful in living up to his campaign promises, not just for one term, but for two four-year terms. As the governor of New Mexico from 1994 to 2002, Governor Gary Johnson did not, I repeat, did not raise taxes. He realized what so many lawmakers today don't. If the free market is left free of government interference, it actually works. In relying on the free market and pushing through a strong privatization agenda, and without taking money from the people of New Mexico, the state prospered. Governor Johnson vetoed well over 700 bills and cut 1,000 jobs from the state workforce. The free market, limited government, protection of civil liberties. It all worked in New Mexico when Gary Johnson was the governor. The founding fathers knew this, and so did Governor Johnson. Joining me now is the former two-time governor of the state of New Mexico and current honorary chairman of the Our America Initiative, Governor Gary Johnson. Governor, it's a pleasure. Welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Judge, thank you for having me on, and you hit it on the head. The whole notion of free markets, that this what this country is all about.
Do we have a free market? Do we have capitalism today? Or are we so overregulated, primarily by the feds, but also by many of the states, that you can't even call it a free market anymore?
Well, I'm going to tell you what you already know. We're moving further and further away from the free market. The whole notion that we're going to tax corporations, the whole notion that corporations have a choice. We can house the corporations of the world if we'll just adopt rational tax policy. And of course, you know the whole notion of entitlements right now.
Right.
The Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. Last week in the newspaper, Social Security is insolvent as of like 2012, not 2038. So entitlements right now are the real boogeyman in this country. 43 cents out of every dollar that we're spending right now is borrowed.
Here's the dilemma as I see it. The big government folks in both parties, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, have switched the debate from whether the federal government should provide benefits, let's just take health care, for example, to how the federal government should provide those benefits. In doing so, they have very skillfully confused rights with goods. How many times do you hear a senator, usually a liberal Democrat, but Republicans say that as well, that you have a right to health care? Now, I always thought, Governor Johnson, that our rights come from our humanity, which is a gift from God, and rights are ours by virtue of our birth. Freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of worship, freedom not to worship, the right to defend yourself, the right to travel, freedom of the press. And that goods are things that we purchase or are purchased for us, like food, shelter, clothing, and health care. How did we get to the point where somehow government benefits are no longer considered goods, but rights, as if people have an entitlement to them by virtue of their birth?
How did we get to the point where Republicans, during the last health care debate, were saying that Democrats were looking to cut Medicare? Of course we need to cut Medicare. This whole notion of entitlement, the whole notion that everything that we're doing right now is coming at the cost of a 43-cent per dollar borrowed dollar. The fact that we're building roads, schools, bridges, and hospitals in Iraq and Afghanistan when 43 cents out of every dollar of those building dollars are being borrowed. This is insanity. And this notion that our kids and our grandkids are going to have to pay this back is absurd. It's here. It's now. We're bankrupt. Promises were made, and they can't be kept. Promises were made, and they should have never been made because actuarially they were never going to happen. In 1967, the federal government passed Medicare at an estimated cost of $10 billion in 1980. In 1980, it cost $100 billion. Today, it's north of $500 billion.
Yeah. You're right about Republicans contributing to this. I mean, question: under what president did the federal government federalize education? George W. Bush. Under what president did the federal government start paying for all prescription drugs for seniors? George W. Bush. Once you get into these things, look, my parents, I love them. They're in their 80s. They planned their lives on receiving these federal benefits at this point in their lives. It would be catastrophic to take it away from them and from others in their generation. But it's not justified or authorized by the Constitution. It's not justified by Economics 101. It's not even justified by common sense. Social Security and these entitlements are a Ponzi scheme. If a private person runs a Ponzi scheme, the federal government prosecutes them and puts them in jail. It's only the federal government that gets away with a Ponzi scheme.
This is a Ponzi scheme, and it's here, and it's now, and we're going to have to pay for it. And my generation has to step up to the plate here and address these issues. And it is going to be slashing spending because, of course, back to this whole notion of deficit and the fact that we are a bankrupt nation. And it's the issues that face us right now from these entitlements. It's never going to be easier to address these issues than tomorrow. Never. Is it going to be easy? No way, but never, ever easier than tomorrow.
I don't think that we have enough courage in the political class. You are an exception. Congressman Ron Paul's an exception. There's a dozen or 2 dozen Republicans in the House and maybe 1 or 2 Democrats. Maybe there's 1 or 2 in the Senate who have the political courage to do the right thing. The government last week raised the debt ceiling by $2.2 trillion. It borrowed the $2.2 trillion to pay back the interest on debt that it incurred just a few years ago. It didn't reduce the principal on the debt. It just incurred more indebtedness. The politicians simply don't care what happens in the future. They only care what happens on their watch, and they will cook any books to make their watch look good. What do we do about it?
It's got to stop now. This whole notion, Scott Brown getting elected, I hope no Republican looks at that as America is turning to Republicans. I think Republicans have as much to share in this as Democrats, and right now it's vote anybody that's in office out of office because this is insanity. It needs to get addressed now, and it's not getting addressed. It's just getting continually pushed back.
A lot of the people that watch this show, many of whom love when you come on, have been asking this. Are you going to begin to take a more active role, Governor Johnson, in the liberty movement? You must know that you are a hero to millions because you were steadfast when you were the governor of New Mexico to the basic principles of the primacy of the individual, the indispensability of the free market for human economic progress, limited government, and fidelity to the Constitution. Are we going to hear more of that from Gary Johnson?
Yeah, I'm out on the stump here, and I'm out on the stump because, with Our America Initiative, I'm out on the stump here because what I'm saying needs to be said, and I'm not hearing it. I'm just not hearing it. I'm hearing this being pushed off, and it's not happening. It's, again, taxes going up across the board, entitlements that have to be addressed, and they're not being addressed, a deficit that's now, when you look at the entitlements, the liability from our entitlements, $55 trillion and growing. Bankrupt nation. And kids. I attended Students for Liberty a week ago in Washington, D.C.
Right.
These kids have it. They understand it. There is great optimism for the fact that so many people are, you included, sir, you have made a huge difference when it comes to understanding what this country is about and what it should be about. Thank you.
Governor Johnson, former Governor Gary Johnson from New Mexico, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.